everybody. So I'm once again working on rogo. Today I'm working on the import command. I started this yesterday. The idea is that we're going to take data that is the test cases that are stored in a org file, something like this. We're going to import them into a database. Where I left off yesterday, I have a new class called test description, and I have a database table in SQLite that mirrors this structure. And I have the org parser generating that table, generating test descriptions in that format. So when I run parse test, I'm able to call org test.tests, I've given it a path, and it is going to find it's going to return a bunch of these structures, a bunch of these objects in this structure that I lost. And we're going to now stick them in this table with a simple SQLite statement. Well, maybe not called tests anymore. Oh, there we go. So the idea is I will load it from this file, and using this, we'll figure out what the challenge ID is. So each course is called a challenge in rogo being the server that I'm running. And it will go through and find each one of these little sections that have a name and an in source and an end source, and it will import it. And once we get that working, then we will have completely decoupled the runner from this this format, and we'll be able to change that format. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit. I made this 10 years ago, and I have some not taking advantage of the org's ability to make rich content and formatting of your text, because I'm shoving it all inside of a source block. We're going to change the parser a little bit, but first let's get it into the database and make sure everything runs, pulling the tests out of the database. Yeah, so as of yesterday, we now have this little, so rogo is the script that runs everything, and it now calls, it's a shell script right at the moment, and it's going to call driver.py, which is our shell, and we can tell it to, we can give it any of these methods as a command, so login, test, challenges, and so on. If we don't give it a command, it gives us a list of commands that we can use. So it gives us some help. Gives us the list of available commands, including the word shell, which is not one of those, but we've appended it on there. And then if we have shell, then we can say help, and we can get even more information about that, like what does Q do, exit the shell. So there we go. And if we say rogo test, oops, then we will run the test against our server, which needs to be running. It's not running, so let's run it. Probably the server ought to be unnecessary. At the moment, we are actually, the test talk to the server by hitting the list of challenges that it's meant to hit the server and request a list of challenges on the dummy server with the dummy database. And that gives you this list. The server wasn't running, it failed. Now it's passing. But the actual data, the actual tests, when you run rogo test, they're currently being pulled from this file. So in other words, the test had two tests. The first test is to quit, and the second test is the self-test, right? So it's testing itself. The second test is to list the challenges, and so that actually talks to the server. And so it's the thing being tested is what's talking to the server, and that's why the server has to be running. But the server doesn't have to be running to run the test, if that makes any sense. I was actually thinking about this yesterday, about like gaming the system and leaderboards and whatnot. I was planning on having it on keeping the tests kind of like secret, like the list of tests would be secret for and you wouldn't be able to you see even what the tests are until you pass them. But the more I thought about it, like this is this is a game, so to speak, that's easy to cheat, right? Like it doesn't really make sense to have a leaderboard, because if you wanted to, you could trick the system, right? By just looking at what the expected outcome is and just having an implementation, quote unquote, that is simply a mapping of input strings. So what you just look at the input strings and then say, well, this is the output that I'm supposed to get, and you just map those one to the other, and that's it. That's the only thing you have to do to pass this test. So I was thinking I would use that as an opportunity, and maybe like even talk about, like, why do you need a leaderboard, right? Why do you need to, what does it mean to be a leaderboard on this thing when this is something that's about self-improvement, right? And so I was thinking, first of all, to even use the leaderboard, like, you have to understand how easy it is to cheat. And so I thought I would like make, a course on how to cheat the system a requirement, so that you can get it out of your system and, like, get to the top of the leaderboard or whatever, and then come back and um, right. So in other words, in order to get to the, in other words, the achievement for reaching the highest score on the leaderboard would be to do this cheat, and then everybody who's on the leaderboard has the same score, which is a top possible score. And I think that's kind of cool. And then the next question is, okay, well, now that you've done that, did you actually learn anything? You learned a little bit about how to make a script, but did you learn anything important to you? And so now the question is, like, well, what are your goals, and how do you improve, right? So how can you do it for real? Um, yeah. So it's just, it's kind of a silly thing, but I thought, this is really about. I don't know who's going to buy this system, but I know a lot of people that like work as programmers and or work in as like data scientists or something, where they do some programming on the side, or some programming is part of their job, and don't feel like they're competent, right? Or feel like they they're they don't really know how to program or something. A lot I've seen, part of the reason that this whole course came out was people would come into the Learn Programming channel on IRC. I guess it's still there, and they would say, well, I've done all these tutorials and I don't know what to do. I don't feel like I've done anything. And of course, when you go through tutorials, you see things happening, but it's like a guided tour. You're not a native. You didn't learn the thing for real. You didn't learn how to do it on your own, right? You learned how to do it with help. And I think there are like two basic steps of the programming process. One is like taking a problem and breaking it down into steps, and then two is figuring out how to do those steps. I guess maybe three would be like actually figuring out how to express what you want to do in the language of your choice. That's the coding part. And I don't really know how to help with the first step, or at least I don't think this system, rogo, is not meant to help with that first step of breaking things down, except that it's giving you an example of how things are broken down, right? And so now it's presenting you with the broken down pieces that are now challenges for you to figure out. And it doesn't tell you how to do them, so you have to do that part. So it's meeting you kind of halfway. It's like, it's not quite a tutorial, but it's a series of guided challenges that give you like a game to play. And so that's the idea. I guess I'm not using that process for myself here. Like, this is a self-test, but like, I'm not really, like, I don't have a test for import here, and I'm not really sure what it would look like, right? I suppose I would have to, somehow the test itself would have to be able to feed in the content of a test, right? And that, so I'm not sure I have the ability to express that idea here. But anyway, so I'm off script here, and I'm just kind of working on my own. And I don't use a system like this to do my own programming, except when it comes to like learning a new language or something. And so, but like having a path laid out for you, a trail to follow, is kind of nice. Then you do all the it gives you a series of questions to ask about your environment, and then I don't know. Yeah, I feel like there's some benefit to having a path laid out before you, where you are building something and you're building on a solution, So you get to see what it's like to build not just a one-liner, but a whole project in a language, and like what articles or what issues do you deal with as things start to grow, and you repeat yourself. You try to remove that repetition. How does that happen? I think there's some value in that. We'll see. I'm also going back and forth on like how to charge for this thing. Part of me wants this all to be free, so that the most people can use it, and then part of me wants validate the idea that people will actually pay for this. The question is, how do I do that? If I could, if I can do this in such a way that it I charge a small amount and get a huge number of users, that would be great. If I can get a small number of users and charge a little more, that would be great. If I could, do it in such a way that I start getting a ton of traffic to my YouTube channel and then that pays for the thing, that would be great too. And I'm kind of open to any of those things. I haven't really nailed down a plan yet other than the general idea of getting this out to the public and then making another course that I hope people will either directly as a subscription model or through some kind of Kickstarter or something. But that all depends on getting this out the door. So definitely something here is going to be free. I might even do like the basics of a Tetris game for free, and then make an advanced level where you pay a small amount. See if people will pay for it. We'll see. Excuse me, I'm definitely been sick for a couple days. All right, so enough rambling. Let's get in here and start working. So, as I said, my goal is to get these test descriptions that I'm generating from this test plan into a database, and the command I plan to use for that is called rogo import. So, in the driver, which is the command line tool, I see you double click on it and you get a zoomed out version. I wonder if that I've been trying to, a little distracted here, but I've been trying to get that to it doesn't zoom into the one editor. You have to get the split screen. That's fine. All right, so driver.py. In here, we need to add a thing called import. Out of curiosity, generally, yeah, so these are just not in any particular order. Maybe I could put a ordering system on here. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me what order they come in. So def do. So you give it a do underscore something, and then you import self arg order challenge. That's right. Implemented. And what we're going to do, I guess you give it a file name. If os path, do I have os in here? This os this command JSON. Okay. Import os if os path exists arg. Yep, that's about right. And then, oh no, that's not what we want. Nope, not client. We want to use import org test. Tests equals org test tests from arg. And then for t in tests, print t.name, just to have it do something for now. All right, so rogo import. Okay. If not arg, print yes challenge.org. All right, so we say import testplan.org. All right, that's what I wanted to see, so we're good. And I guess I also want to print out the URL of the test. Like so let's say print. So really we want it like a challenge object. That's basically what I want, yes. Name, URL, and description. It's more like a title or a name, whatever. Name, URL. Maybe ID. Shade. Challenge ID is an integer, yes. Years and years ago, I made a thing similar to, this is a data classes, the new thing in Python that lets you annotate your class with a bunch of fields, and then it generates this for you, init self, and then it generates a method that says, like, yeah, exactly this. It takes all of the parameters and then assigns them to instance variables. Years ago, I did something like this, and there was a problem because you couldn't describe. Well, first of all, there wasn't a type syntax in Python at the time, and so I think I had to say, like, chid equals adder int is syntax I had at the time. It's called wrong box. But if you wanted to, like, link to the test description, so tests would be like link test description, but you couldn't go the other way. So you couldn't say challenge would be linked to a challenge, right? Well, in this case, you would just say challenge, right? And you see how it's not defined yet. That's actually valid Python as far as I know. Inside of a class description, it's legal to use a name that has not been defined yet, I believe. Anyway. Is it going to give me an error, though? Unresolved reference, yeah. Anyway, so when I did it, you would say there was link, and then there was, like, some other name for, like, a set of them, like a list of them, and then you would have to say lambda, and so you would have to escape it with a lambda. But this should not be the case. That shouldn't be the case. You should be able to do this, and this should be valid Python. And it's giving me an IDE error, but it's not giving me a thing. So let's see if it works. What? I could have sworn I looked this up and it said that this was valid inside of the scope of a def foo. Oh. Maybe I'm lying about that. That's a challenge. Required positional arguments. They don't even have depth. Oh, but you can give them names. Is that gonna? What does this say? But we now have to say from import implib import lib reload test desk, and now we can say test description. Oh, okay, that's not right. So that didn't do it. That use a factory, right? Can you fix it? Default factory. All right, let's figure out what default factory is. Right. Interesting. This is okay because strings are not mutable in Python. You cannot modify a string. You can only create a new string based on that. Whereas a list, you can append to a list. Like say you have two variables pointing at the same list, they they're pointers. Whereas two variables pointing to the same string, you change one of them, they're no longer talking to. They're no longer both pointing at each other. Okay, so that was completely unnecessary. But now that we have this thing, let's say reload. You know what? Let's do IPython. No, that's not what I wanted. Interesting. Did that run that? You should have said import test underscore desk. But that was, I just discovered a feature that I did not know about. Okay, so now that they're in the local space, in the namespace. All right, so then if we say test description, run it, okay, and then if we say foo, that seems to work. So this is perfectly valid, but not up here. So then the question is, oh, probably we could say challenge. How do you even say the type of something that's a, this is not important, right, at all. I'm just curious. My own curiosity. I want to do like a default function. As a descriptor. Init only variables. Database. Python data class parent child forward reference. Yeah, that's what I want to see. Python 3.7 has introduced lazy evaluation of annotations. So, okay, so you just put it in quotes. I don't think this actually, does this actually, name equals 7, does that actually fail? No, it doesn't. It doesn't check the type. So what my thing did 100 years ago was actually check these types at runtime. So it would do a type check. So we just put it in quotes with the answer. Yeah. All right, anyway. So we want to say tests. Oh, sorry, this goes here. Test description. I don't even know that we need the ID, because at this point I'm not trying to do any kind of like relational mapping, am I? So, it's not persistent. You're not going to be modifying them. The thing I did in the past, so I had this whole object relational mapper, and I had this. So there was a concept called a clerk that would like lazily load objects as you follow these links. A link and link set that. And so if you said .test, it would actually know about the tables for each one of these classes, and then you have to tell it about the tables for each one of these classes, and lazily load everything, and you can traverse like whole graphs. I'm sure there are other database systems, but that was mine. We had Strongbox for this kind of thing for the data classes. Clerks, the mapping, and then there was another module called storage that would abstract over different kinds of storage. Okay. I don't think I need any of that complexity right now. I just have a data class and a data class, and I'm going to get a challenge. And the reason I want a challenge is so right now I have word tests, but so really this should be called the challenge, right? When we parse these things, I think it completely ignores the name of the test. Right, and I need to parse these two lines at the very top and put them into the database, right? So I need the title and the URL. So this is probably should have a default name. So even name URL. My name is rogo. Name rogo, URL is this. So those three fields basically. Three fields in the challenge is called name, description, URL. The title will be the description. And then in the object, what do I have? The class description. Name, description, URL. Okay. So what we want to do here I'm thinking about giving these names, because I need to introduce a new state. So let's do -1 here. Self read on meta self. Hang on. Self do nothing yet. So this is still nothing. Initial state for reading metadata. And then the transitions would be from state -1 if we see name and we see not begin source, we want to see. So if we see the name, we're going to stay in name, on test name. This doesn't really fit the model of what I was doing before. So just read meta. So on meta. Read on meta. Expect meta. Self expect meta. And so we need we're going to get rid of this. This is so we say self tests. We're going to say self challenge, I guess, equals test challenge, rogo challenge. Did I give them defaults? Go back to the list. All right, so it's self challenge, and then we're going to get rid of self test. So every time we see self test, let's middle click on it to find all the things. So we'll say self challenge. Oh, I see. Tests. All right, so we still have this current part of the old parser that kind of does this. So let's just go ahead and make that. And then when we see the lines, so on meta line, on meta line, def on meta line, self line, pass, and let's actually just move this up a little bit because it kind of logically goes up here. If line starts with title, sure. So that is the description. If line starts with URL, come on, do it. There we go. If line starts, this is bad code, right? Kind of, but whatever. Challenge name, and that's it. And if self, first of all, let's call it C or something like C equals self challenge. So we'll say if C description and C, I should have just used multiple cursors to do this, but C.name equals whatever. Okay, so then if C dot title and C dot URL and C dot name self state equals 0. That's exactly right. All right, so this is not foolproof, doesn't have a lot of error checking, but we have all this. Else print expect title URL and name lines at start of file and this exit. Okay. Raise system exit. No, that doesn't actually do what I want. But raise system exit. I mean, you can just say exit, right? You don't need a sys. You don't need sys for that. Yes, I want to exit. So if we say rogo and we just try to read some arbitrary file, rogo import like that file or test.py. Oh, Jeff expected something. So syntax error somewhere. And 171. See this highlighted red line right here? We're def. Yeah, so expect that up there. So now if we try to expect testplan.org, see title, title is the wrong name. Let's call it title. I think title is a better name for this. So for the challenges, we'll instead of description, we'll call it title. Name, title, factor. So in the database, we're going to change it. And in the, we'll call it title. And then over here, wherever we said description, oh, I did say title and then I didn't. Right, okay. No, this should have popped up in my search. C title, C URL, C name. Okay. Title, URL, name, lines at start of file. This is driving everything. So this is saying based on the current state, increments the line number and call this function with this line. So what is the problem? Print unexpected line, unexpected line. I'm just going to use an F string here. Unexpected line. What is this exclamation point syntax? Oh, I see. It represents it. So the word to use here is line. I've never tried this exclamation point syntax before. Online self.line no. And let's see what it says. Line 4, expect title, URL, and CNAME. I would expect this to fire. Print switching to normal state. Doesn't fire that. Title, URL, and name. Did I not put them all in? Title, name, URL. Are these not all truthy? Surely they are. Come back here. So we shouldn't split on this. We should split on this at 1 and split on URL with only one split and name it with 1 split. Okay, let's try that again. Challenge name. Print line. You get this line, then we extract the title. Yes, we get this line and we extract the URL. Yes. State 0, yes, yes. State 1, or line number 1, rogo. Line number 2, URL. Rogo didn't trigger anything. Name. Line starts with Is it because of this? It's possible this. Okay, so let's look at the code here. It's possible this isn't working. It should only trigger when this is seen in the current state. So match equals row 2 for row and self. So in all the transitions, if row 0 is the current state and the line starts with row, then that's a match. Otherwise, self states. Right, so this is not triggering. And on meta line, print meta line. Meta line. Got this, not a meta line. This is a meta line. So why is this not? Because state is 0. Why is state 0? Because I didn't set it to -1. Oh, that's why. Okay. And now it's dying on line on test code online self states state line state. First of all, where it says extract tests, we're going to say self online line, and then now we can get rid of this notion of call. That was okay. Self states, and what's the problem here? Has no attribute focus. Self focus append on test code. Why is it saying on test code? I'm in -1. State is -1. State is -1. On test code. It's only here if we're in state 1. There's too many blank lines. Let's read your state machine. Is this overridden somewhere? Ah, right here. Where's this? But it never fired the switching to normal state thing. I mean, the problem is I could put, I could fix this, but well, I wouldn't fix it though, because like this function shouldn't be being called, right? I'm in state -1. It says I'm in state -1. Oh, but they're ordered. It's an ordered list. All right, so self state equals 2. That's why. That's kind of clunky. Like, what's the point of having it in there if it? It's just meant as a lookup table. Okay, so this all works now. I don't need this. This is bugging now. We don't need this. We don't need this. Oh, we'll go ahead and print it just to make sure that it works, but I'm pretty sure it works now. We can just hide this line. Yeah. So name is rogo, URL is this, and title is rogo test suite. That's what I wanted. So that's all good. And we'll get rid of that. Switching normal state, right? Okay, so that's only output should be the names of the tests, which are coming from these lines here. I'm going to reformat this file. I'm going to change this parser. I'm not worried about the code being all yucky. Wow, that's a lot of changes. Yeah, return test. Sometimes that reads my mind. Sometimes it gives me complete nonsense. All right, so what's changing the test plan? Oh, I added the name. Okay. Get diff test desk. Yeah, so we get the challenge. All right, so now we need to return this challenge object with all of the tests. So when we call tests, it should really read return test challenge, or sorry, re-challenge. Path dot test, yes. Def read challenge in from a path. C equals test reader track test, right? This track test return. We say parse, and then we return self challenge tests dot tests equals parse test for X and self tests, and then return self challenge. All right, so this probably should be a method on here now, but all right, so then all we need to really say is parse. All we need is just one little line right here. Test reader state machine parse path. I expect all this to still continue to work. And so if I say rogo test, it should test itself and everything should work. It did not. Is the server still running? It is not running, okay, because somewhere when I change these descriptions, right, I was even calling it title in the, somehow I changed title to description. All right, so debugger is active now. Try it again. All 2 tests passed. Hey, somebody came and watched me for a second and left. That's okay. I don't even need the number of tests, but like the front end, the server shows it. So okay. Rogo test works. All right, so all of this was basically to move or to have the parser create a, or, contain a challenge object. So create a challenge object. So GS. I think everything related to this is yeah. So everything here is git commit -m, introduce challenge container for tests. So now we have all of those, and now we'll be able to I think the unique thing here, I think name and URL need to be unique. His name is the short name you're going to use to refer to it. You could have 2 versions of the same file. Right. We're going to say name got to be unique somehow. Maybe you do that by introducing a check, unique key, columns, add column name. The name has to be unique. Or is it adding the or is it saying name? Constraint challenges PK unique. Oh, I see. So challenge name. All right, and we'll go ahead and add a unique key here. Talent and challenge URL, and it has to be unique. Does it have to be unique? I think it has to be unique, yeah. And yeah, so I think. And this should be a text. Column actually should be text. Because they're empty. Okay, so they. All right, so can't add this yet. Because hang on. Okay, so this should all work. There we go. Boom, boom, boom. It renamed everything for me. Can't add this because it's not actually there. So https rogo.tangentcode.com learntris and https other. Maybe the name doesn't. I think the name should be unique so that you can refer to it, so that you can refer to it quickly, and then the URL should be unique so that it uniquely identifies the thing to solve, or the place where it goes. Possibly the name could just be the last part of the URL, though. We'll see. Maybe I don't have to specify the name. Okay. So what did that accomplish? Made those unique. Puts unique constraints on them. Okay. I go. On challenge name URL. What? Oh, whatever it has to be. There's some way you can make a diff for SQLite, but diff will go out. But I don't know how to do it. You can plug in diffs, diff. Okay. Probably what I should do is just dump the SQLite. That's normally I would just work with the source code. I'm experimenting with SQLite thing and SQLite editor in the IDE. I don't really like checking in binary files, but before I make this, it is open source right now. But before I publish it, I'm gonna web. But before I announce it, export, get rid of this binary file. Okay. So again, we're trying to do rogo.import, and so far that read the file. Rogo import challenge.org testplan.org. All right, and so when it does import, driver, and we're going to change this to what? So we'll say C challenge test, and then we can print challenge.name .url and .title. has no object name. Let's put read challenge arc. So the server has this. Where's the server? The server's called app.py. And I think we want to we want to like a database directory or file. So we want to make a new file called. Before I make a new file, I'm gonna see if I can make PyCharm have PyCharm default to line feed endings. Control Alt S. Code style. Editor code style. I want to say like line separator. Line separator, always use Unix and Mac OS. General, that was not even project specific, that's just a global configuration. All right. Nope, it was not global. Error, YouTube is not internet go down? Receiving enough video to main, okay, so low internet connection. Do I need this? I guess. Yeah, I changed the project style so other people, if they ever contribute. Settings, and even in the project, also say line separator operator. Specifically for this project. Like if it's going to make a file anyway, I might as well have the file say what I wanted to say, which is. And then I'm going to go through all my files and make sure they all have the right kind of line in. Fixed line endings. Okay. YouTube is not receiving enough information. As such, viewers will be experiencing buffering. I don't know that I can do anything about that, can I? Drop frame 0%. It says like I'm getting 3 megabytes per second. Oh well. I mean, the frames aren't that big a deal. It's just my head moving around. So. Sorry. Nothing I can do about it. Okay, so we fixed PyCharm anyway. What's next? We've made a couple changes to driver.py, which are these changes right here, whatever they are. That we're going to print out the name and title. So, okay, so before I do this, right, so now what I wanted to do was make a new file that has to do with the database file. I want a Python file. A rogo database. Line feed format, hooray. All right, and so then we will extract that into this server thing. So over here to the right, and then close all the things we don't need. I just opened a million files. All right. We're going to say, instead of import SQLite3, we're going to say from database import rel. Fetch a relation from the database. Okay. I think that's it. That's the only little piece of it I needed, right? Because I'm not writing to this thing never writes to the database. It only reads. I could call it select. Fetch. Call it fetch. Database import fetch, and then we'll say fetch selects blah 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 blah. Let's make sure it still runs. This is still, I'm going to stop the whole process because make sure the modules are loading cleanly. Error. Very. Okay, anyway, that all seems to work. So if I say rogo test, there we go, it's hitting the database and all is passed. Fetch the data from the database and all is well. Okay, so then we could say git add this, git commit -m, extract module, extract database module. And we'll leave the driver unchanged, uncommitted, because we're going to do something with this now. Okay, so now that we have this module, hide this. We don't need that anymore. And we can import the database. This import from database import fetch. And we're going to say fetch select. Is that prepare a statement? So we should put like args in here. So whatever we pass to the, to the database, you could put in like, parameters or whatever. So select, oops. Star from challenges where name equals r.challenge. Where name is equal to chow. Name. All right, so we found it, and let's say let's just introduce something that's not going to be found. All right, so it finds nothing. So when do we get the walrus operator? Python walrus operator. 3.8. And what does it look like? It's colon equals. So if old, then sorry, challenge already exists in the database. Try rogo delete. If you want to replace it. Okay, and then we will return. So then we say do delete self arg delete a challenge. Yeah, that's about it, except we're going to say I'm change his name to query. I think a query can be query cannot be an imperative, but in English, but it can be in SQL. Query perfectly. Query select start from challenges where name equals blah blah blah. And then we'll just say query, or let's say old is equal to take the first row of the first value, and then which is only going to be one value because we provide different and it's unique. So it's either 0 or 1 rows, and then there's first value in the row. Delete row ID equals old. Query delete from test where I believe it's called a chid is equal to old, and delete from challenges where row ID is. And where progress, same thing in progress. Progress is not in the table. Oh, that does not exist yet, so we won't worry about it. I haven't added that table yet. I do. To do delete from challenges where row ID equals old, and then delete. That's it. Print challenges. All right, so now if I try and do this, sorry, challenge already exists in the database. So I don't need to say DB result. That come from. I printed that before. And we didn't even need the walrus operator. All right, challenge already exists in the database. Try challenge, not rogo. Oh yeah, it is. Rogo is the name of the challenge. I'm gonna make these f strings again. Challenge child.name, and again, child.name, in database. I don't need quotes around that. Oh, but I'm trying to challenge database. Sorry, challenge rogo, already existing database. Try rogo, delete rogo if you want to replace it. And let's be grown-ups and put like capital letters and use. Challenge rogo exists in the database. Sorry, yeah, I like the word sorry there. Sorry, challenge already exists in the database. Database use rogo, delete rogo if you want to. Rogo, delete rogo. What? Oh, it's a dictionary. ID is 1. ID is 1. Old is old 0. ID is 1. Okay. Um. I guess description is none, then return none else. Right, because description would not, you wouldn't have a, right. None type objects, not iterable. Right, so if you get a none, then database is locked. Why? What is locking the database? I don't believe that should happen. I think even though the server has it open, it's not. This has it open. Really commit. Want to equal query and commit. Sounds deleted. There we go. It's really saying it's static, but it doesn't have the word self in it. But actually, we use arg, so not correct. The problem is that just that it's for itself. Action. I want to ignore this. Well, whatever. It'll just complain about it. Challenge. All right, challenge rogo does not really exist. All right, so now we should be able to say rogo import rogo. Nope. Rogo import testplan.org. And didn't actually import anything yet. But it checked that we didn't have it in there, and so now we can say, excuse me. Hello, I'm online. I'm streaming. Name, title, URL, values, chow, URL. Just call it C. Again, because PyCharm is complaining about it. How about chid is this, and we'll make commit return dbc last row ID. So that might not actually be relevant data, but right. So of course this is mad because it's not lined up the way it wants it lined up. All right, and then yep, insert into test chid name title code. Nope, that's not correct. Is it? No. So we have to get the name of the into tests. That part is correct. I call them name, head, chid, body. So we're gonna delete this part. So we're gonna say chid name, head, body, I lines, O lines. Oops, values, blah, 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 blah. And then this is that, but for the I lines, we have to say join. Rather, we say new line join those. And then TO lines, we're going to say and join. mad at that spelling. We're going to add this to the dictionary. Okay. I like to use that tid and nid and chid, and like node ID is a nid. Okay. Challenge ID is a chid. Okay. Chid, name, head, body, I lines, O lines. Oh, but I didn't put enough of these on here. Chid, name, head, body, I lines, O lines. Probably that should be a transaction. And put commit at the bottom. Commit, so begin. How about db begin, db commit? No. I call it like handle. Handle. How about import database as DB? All right, and then where do we see database? We say db.query, db.query. db commit in one fell swoop. Yes. This could be a transaction too. tx equals db begin, tx commit. tx execute, tx execute. Why don't we just call it do? Do. If db.query db begin, that's what we're saying, right? db begin, and then tx do. I'm surprised I'm not getting errors here, but okay, so this should be weird that you have to like reformat the file every time you change it once it lined up with that. Begin, do, and the def begin. Oh, I see. So execute and commit would be the words I have to use, unless I want to write a wrapper. Wrapper to return this. So return. Return a connection so you can begin a transaction. So this really has to be do. What if I say tx equals and tx.do equals tx execute, and then return tx. Then we have tx do, print tx commit. Okay. Rude. All right, so we have to use the word execute, or we could really fight with Python, but it doesn't like that, so we'll just say execute. Found rogo deleted. And we want to import testplan.org. I should probably move this to the other side, right? Because I can't see the. There's a Windows somewhere. Can't move the window. Go. Insert into test chid. So chid did not like that. So chid is tx execute. Oh. Chid is tx last row ID. Connection object has no attribute. There we go. All right, so you get back a cursor, and from that you get the row ID and insert into this. This is why you write an object relational mapper, right? I think the language should just take care of all this nonsense. But you can't like write code in SQL, and you can't, so there needs to be. I wish there was like a language that gave you all the power of SQL. And you didn't have to escape down into SQL, right? You would just have the database, and you would have your language. And I'm actually thinking about doing that as part of my series of, I want to like make a web framework. I would build it atop a like that. That just comes with a web handler and and a database and language for building web. All right, boom, there we go. right, so now if we go in here and we just look through the database, how do I just get like a console? Open default console. Okay, so select star from tests. So there it is. These are the output lines. Here's the input line challenges here. And I don't have any body inside of it. List available challenges as a title. Okay. Okay. So now I have to get it back out. Hello? I don't want anything right now. Thank you. I'll come down a little bit. All right, so challenge rogo deleted, io.q, io.c. All right, so let's just say, so this is, which one is printing out? Challenge imported with, exactly, that's what. So we do that again. Challenge rogo deleted, challenge rogo imported with 2 tests. Again, let's try and capitalize things and put a period at the end of the sentence. Rogo deleted. Go deleted, or with 2 tests, and then we need to delete this old. Print out. Sorry. Challenge rogo does not exist in the database. Usage challenge. There we go. Okay. Implement rogo import and rogo delete. Okay, so now in the .rogo file, .rogo, the targets me, and so we need to tell it what challenge we're going to run. So we in this file, it should know what challenge to run, and the challenge should not be a name, but a URL, which would be https rogo.tangentcode.com. Not a URL, not a real URL. I want it to be C rogo. It just can just be rogo for now. That's what it is in the database. It does not go anywhere. I own this domain, but I might have a different domain here. I might not use this domain for the product or whatever. Right, and so now we're going to put it in here. First, let's just call it X challenge. And the reason is I'm going to go into the runner. I guess in the database, let's give it just def fetch challenges, fetch challenge, and then URL. URL equals query if URL if not URL. Let's not give it a default. So it's a string. URL is a string. If not, so URL. So C is equal to this. If not C, raise lookup error not found in the database. Okay. So we're still here. Now, about data, if not, how about query result? QRes. How about row? Rows. If not rows, or row. And now the res is going to be row is going to be so challenge row 0. That's it. So we have a dictionary and we can apply the keys to create a challenge. From test underscore desk import challenge. I want to rename that. Dash. I don't have to rename it. I'll rename it here. Just we're gonna call this model. I didn't use it, so okay. So git if org test runner, and these should just be changes. Git commit, git add, git commit dash m. Rename, oh, hello, whoever's watching. Welcome. Rename, just doing a little cleanup here. Test desk to model. All right. Now that I have the model, I'm going to say for model import challenge, and res is a new challenge, and then for t in that's not going to work because it's going to try and apply a row ID. So we can say rows, right? And then we can say row equals rows 0, and then we can say row pop row ID. And so say chid equals row pop ID, and now we can just create the row, and then this is the chid. And that way we don't have to put a database ID on this object that is not. We should do that. All right, so then test description. So we need to get the challenge and a test description. And we're going to make a test description t pop things that I don't need, chid t pop chid test description. And then so res append. This is like an object relational mapper. Like, I don't want to do that. So anyway, now we have a challenge. All right, so in the runner, we say find target, run tests. It needs to be reorganized a little bit. So we have to find the, how do I get the tests? Org test plan. Okay. So test plan, no longer this. And this is all stuff that also needs to be in the config file. And we're gonna have to go to test plan. So we need like a get. Again, this needs to be refactored a bit. Def get plan. Get challenge. All right, so we're removing all this. The runner, we're never running the runner directly anymore. So because we have replaced it with the shell. So there is no need to call this main function. But it's called from elsewhere, right? When you run rogo test, you pass this in. Okay, so what we need to do is not allow this dash shell thing. No, okay, hang on a second. So when you run rogo test, it's as if you're passing in all these parameters, but there's no parameter to tell it what test plan to use, except for this whole thing needs to be like refactored. But basically, we're going to say like I'm reading this config file like in line in the code. That needs to be like extracted into like a object here. So like Yeah, okay, because in the past, you've always been able to run whatever file you want here by passing it on the command line. Now it's in this JSON file. I feel like I'm losing something. I said this yesterday when I was doing this too. Maybe I just throw it away. I kind of want to preserve this ability to not have to do that. But so in the driver, we're going to say do run, do test, and pass in some arguments. Care about these arguments. Feel like I care about them. Feel like I want to try and preserve this. Like, do you need to use this with everything on the command line, or can you just have a config file? Force everyone to use a config. I think what I'm going to do is I'll make a config here. Class config, class config, pass. And we're going to say def load config, pass. And we'd say return config, right? So it's going to return a new configuration. And I'm going to move so let's import data classes again. Maybe even have the config in the model. So it would describe what the class looks like, what the file should look like. I don't know. From data classes, import data class. Is this part of the model? I'm not sure if it's part of the model. Maybe it should be. But in any case, we're going to have self program args is equal to empty list self use shell is false. Okay. And then, so we're going to say config equals load config, and then we're going to move some stuff into this now. So now, whenever we see the word defaults, we're going to replace this. We're going to move this into the config. Or, well, no. That default is like not part of the config yet. Use shell is false. So let's get rid of use shell. But let's replace everywhere we see this. So how do I think it's Alt Shift S. Nope, Alt Shift cursors. How do you see many cursors? PyCharm, multiple cursors. Selection. Alt Shift Insert. No. Alt Shift L. Takes the selection and then Alt Shift L. Nope. Alt Shift L. Nope. Command Shift L. Is what? Windows Shift L. Alt L. Oh, goodness. Alt Shift G is add characters to end select control. Alt Shift G. Not end of selected lines. PyCharm cursor per matched selection. I was looking for Alt Shift G, but whatever. So just make sure we have everyone. 1, 2, 3, 4. And can I replace it or something? Read access, write access, or usages. And is that at the start of each line? No, but it's almost at the start of each line. So you can select it. I don't know why you can't just Control Shift G. Oh, it has to be to the start. Okay, whatever. You shall, and we say config dot, and then there's one where it says config dot if down here. Didn't work. You know what we do? Use shell and replace it with config dot use shell. Do that one. Replace that one. Replace that one. Replace that one. I removed it from the database and put it back in there. I'll just change the test for that for now. I don't know what. rogo import testplan.org, and then rogo test, and then the test should pass. Okay. So the only thing I changed there was the git command-m test plan. Fix self-test expectation. All right. That changed the database. Okay. I got to get rid of that binary file. I don't. Okay, so now rogo database.py get diff. What am I doing? We've added a thing to build these challenges or build the challenge object. And now I have to tell this runner to use the test plan from the right place. So that means that once I've built the config, I think I am gonna move this into the model. And so then program args equals string and field, yeah, that's it. And then u shall bool is false. Okay. Then in the runner, we will import that from config. Maybe what we do is in load config here, up here where we were previously defining globals, let's add input path, skip lines, and test plan to the input path string equals none. Test plan string equals nah. And skip lines int equals 0. Okay, so can't write on the bottom of the screen because you can't have the cursor on the bottom of the screen there. Okay, so up here now we're going to say config cfg equals config, or we can just call it res. I always like to call the results of a function res. Res is config, and then we're going to say res dot input path equals, and we're going to inline this. But here we're going to change the default to, we'll leave this the same. Right. For the docs, did I have docs for that? Doc string or something? Where's the missing? Oh, there were no docs for that. There was no comment for that thing. Path to test plan if running directly from an org file. Okay, so now I don't think we need this anymore because this is actually not run as a main script, and yeah. Test failure. All right, so send commands needs a config parameter. So if config input path okay. And so this is called from, again, there's this, I need to make like a diagram of this, like spaghetti code now. But this needs to have a config. So that means this has a config, and this is a config object. And so now we can say config skip lines. And let's change this back to what it was a minute ago. Oh, test plan. We'll come back to this in a minute. Raise, not implemented. All right, so this thing needed so this needs a config. And so run tests with a config, which is a config object. And we don't need use shell anymore because that's part of config.use shell. So run tests no longer takes that. We take the config, which is going to come from where? Config equals load config. And find target needs to have a config. Why? Because we are passing in this, and then every time we see this, we're going to rename this to CFG. So we're just rename it here, shift F6, CFG, and then we can get rid of it. We pass it in as a parameter. And so this actually returns program args find target, where it's called. And so we have to say config and command line is this, and we will replace all these return statements instead of this. So we're going to say return config. Config itself needs to have program args, yes. So this stuff moves to load config. Return config. This should return a config. So it modifies the config that we've already loaded. Returns modified config. Let's put this back here. So CFG program args equals default, CFG program args equals data. CFG program args equals this, CFG program args. This is messy, messy, messy. I gotta clean this up. And so previously this said something about if use shell let's re-add this. If config use shell, then we don't check for it. Return config CFG, and then elif CFG program config arg return config. So if it exists, then return it. If config use shell or OS path, then return the configuration. Otherwise, elif program arg 0 is default. If config program, so it didn't exist, so my program didn't exist, it was my program, and my program didn't exist, then we're going to raise a file not found error and exit the program. And then otherwise, you got a configuration and you told it not to use the shell, and it did exist, but it's going to complain that the we could actually change this a little bit better. If, then print doc, and then either way, we're going to raise a file not found error with the arguments. And you don't need this. It's already string. And actually, we could just say this elif and bring it back in there. Okay, so if it's default, then we print the docs, and then otherwise it's not found. So let's. Okay, so rogo test, make sure everything still works. Cannot find unpack non. Okay, command. So find target. Right, that is just this. Command equals program config program args. How about we just say command line? So command line equals program args. And I think everything else is the same now. Get challenge. Okay. Get challenge, and we need to pass in the config get challenge. Okay. So if config test plan, meaning we passed in a test plan with the override. So we need a CFG is a config, and we're going to return back a challenge object. So that needs to come from config and challenge. Okay. If I'm going to say read challenge path, and otherwise else elif config challenge URL, then we're going to return we have database imported. Not yet, I don't think. Import database as db, sure. Turn, and then call that function I just made, db fetch challenge, big challenge URL. Else print no challenge specified. Use rogo init or set test plan environment. No challenge selected. And then sysexit. And that is currently the case because it's not called challenge URL, and I don't think anything's parsing it anyway when I say in the load challenge. So my rogo test should say that message. Oh, all two tests passed, so that didn't work. And that's because this is defaulted to testplan.org. Right. All right, so config needs a challenge URL. String equals that. We could probably clean that up a little bit. We'll raise the no test plan exception. No test plan. And then down here, when we're catching all these things, now who calls target? Where's load config? Yeah, I really got to clean this up. Where is this used? This is used here. It's in get challenge. Where's get challenge? It's in run test. Where's run test? It's here. So try this. So except no test plan as E pass. And then we'll print out the thing that. Let's call this an error. Except, so somewhere I have a syntax error right here. No challenge selected. No challenge selected. Use rogo init or set test plan environment. So if I say test plan is equal to testplan.org, test underscore plan, it should run and say all two tests pass, right? Okay, good. So that part works. And then rogo init does not actually work yet. But I'll put a little note here in the driver. Def do init itself. Actually, this should be like, these are like global state. And then this is import or global database state. And then I should go to line column 64. So we'll do global database state, and then when we do test, local project config, one of those, and then we say def do init self, and then we'll say print, not work to do, rogo init, print. For now, just copy the .rogo file from the repo, the rogo repo, and modify it yourself. Okay. Obviously, that's going to work because it just worked a second ago. Without this, it says run rogo init. It says, oh, it should say to do. Do init. We didn't put the arg in there. Actually, challenges is part of the local, of the global database as well. Rogo init. Copy the rogo file from the rogo repo and modify it yourself. For now, please or from rogo repo from print and modify it yourself. In GitHub, and we'll say print, let's end that line right there, and print, and we'll just say where it is, which is github.com, tangent storm, rogo, find that file, .rogo. Can't see what I'm looking at, but okay, I'm just looking up this URL. In fact, we'll even get the raw version. Yeah. The main, the template or example, the main rogo file from GitHub and modify. Okay, so now if we say that, it should give that message. I don't think anyone's going to do this, but following along and wants to try it, you can do it. Try it yourself there. But that doesn't yet contain the important line that says what the config is. But let us go to load config. Yeah. If OS, so .rogo, where is that being loaded? This is in the config loader, and I want to move this into the config directory, but I can't put it as an argument on. How about and so we're going to have default target return this in model.py. So def default target return my program. And this will call it a static method. I can't really do it that way. I can do it that way, but because what I need here is the default target, right? And that way we don't have to import this constantly. Right, so we have a default target. It is a default target by default. And then we say if it's the default. And so that would now be defined up here as soon as we said wherever the config was created, it's going to be set by default. And then if program args equals 0 and, so in other words, if it's not found and the program argument is the first argument is the default target, then yeah, that's it. Possibly overridden by sys rp by command line args. So we're going to get this all the way up here, wherever we said load config. Load config, way up here. If OS path, so if OS path this.rogo, and we're gonna do this res, and then we're gonna say res config the URL, the challenge URL equals data get challenge URL. Right, and the default URL is empty, right? Challenge, yeah. And we'll just make it a string by default. All right, so now this should still say all of this is wrong because I don't have a challenge URL defined. Yeah, so no, not this. Rogo test should say that. Should say no challenge selected. But if I go into the Rogo file and I change this to this, oh, challenge URL. Okay. If the Rogo file exists, then config challenge URL, config challenge URL. Load config is used. Load config is used. If it exists, all these things are passing. Data exists, data get challenge URL. This should give me a key error, right? It's wrong. Why? Because it's right here. By default, it's this, obviously. But in the file, challenge URL is in the data, right? Oh wait, did I fetch? targets. So main data equals this, and then main equals this. Data targets main. And so say main args, say target. Target's main must specify a list of programs. Target. Has no object append. So fetch challenge, that is in the database now. So we made it here, we're fetching it here. And down here, I am saying res tests append. That's it. None type object. So challenge has no attribute tests. Run tests. Oh, and we didn't return it. So return res. And also, I'm seeing something here. So T. Yes, this is correct, but I think we are okay to keep those there. And TO lines. And then is not a valid Win32 application. Okay, so somewhere I big U shell. Okay, so program equals big.u shell. So 132 and 134 run test. So in runner 134, actually command line big program args. I don't actually need this. It is config program arg. Run test. Again, so instead of that, we say config.program args. But somehow we're not getting the right information here. Let's print program arg equals driver.py shell -q, which is right, and use shell equals false. Ah, so the config does not know to use the shell. Res challenge you use. Wait, hang on. Print target. And shell is true. Target get shell false. Use shell is false, but shell is true. So it got that, but it didn't get the use shell underscore part. Okay, so where is use shell? Oh, hang on. Don't override that arbitrarily. Okay, so I think that was the issue. And of course, it's failing because of all this junk that's being printed. Or actually printed out an empty line somewhere. So that's fine. So somehow we're printing out an empty line that we don't need to be printing out. But let's, this now can go away. So target, that goes away. And wherever I print the config, print CFG, print CFG, that goes away. And somehow I've added a print line somewhere. No, what's happening is there's an extra line here. And so in the parser, I need to ignore the empty lines. Ignore the last line at the end, basically, in the parser. But I think you should allow, like, so let's make a chomp. Chomp is a function that comes from Perl. Def chomp line, if line -1 equals n, return line -1 else. Actually, return line -1 if line else line, and that's it. Strip trailing new line. Oops. Strip trailing new line. It wants me to add a new line. Rogo shell-q. Right? Like if I tell it to, just as a sanity check here, hi, in the driver, if I say print hi, that's gonna say bye. It wants an empty line. So the instructions are being parsed as if it had an empty line in it. Oh, but I don't want chomp. Okay, yeah, right. So here's the problem. Python. So we say IPython, and we say you know, like X. Here's my new line. Oops, new line. Join an empty list. We're still going to get a new line. No, we don't. Right? Okay. You have empty split on X. You get an empty list. Oh, you get one empty thing. I see. So that's what I want to remove. So but instead of chomp, I don't want to remove it, the trailing new line. I want to remove a blank line from the end of the list, which would be, where did I put that? That was in database when I'm fetching these things. Um, remove trailing blank line. So here I'm splitting it on n, but if it's an empty string, it's going to get, we're going to get an empty list with a blank line. So, all right, so that is it. It still wants an empty lines. Yeah, that should pop it. Ah, if line's -1. Okay, that's it. That ensures that we have a -1 to go into, which is your last item. And if it is an empty, then we probably should keep the Python thing up, but all right. And now in the runner, we can, in the driver, we can. Okay. Yes, so that came from pulling it out of the database. All right, so now we're pulling tests out of the database, and we can prove that by test plan is not anything, so we can move. We can change the test plan now, and it won't do anything because it's reading out of the database. So rm testplan.org, everything's fine. It's reading out of the database. Okay, so git checkout testplan.org. And if we if we change that again, so if we go back to testplan.org, which is what I was looking at, and we could say goodbye. So we want us to say goodbye, and if we say test plan equals testplan.org, now it will complain. So now we have the ability to do that, and if we do not do this, then it uses the database and all as well. All right, so I preserved the thing I wanted to preserve, and I have it reading out of the database, and I can testplan.org. I don't know if that is git check. Oh, it is. Okay. Git checkout. Then GD, go through my changes and make sure everything is all about reading the database, reading the thing from the database. So challenge URL is rogo, yes. For model import challenge test description. Yeah, we just moved that to later in the file. We added the init stub, default target. This. So now basically all of this was just to move all that information into the config parser, which is now part of the model. So we'll call this, it's kind of a big commit, but I'm just going to put it all in. So git commit load, add config model and load challenges from DB. All right, looking at my little to-do list, I guess I can share. Maybe. Yeah. We've done the rogo file to determine what challenge to use. And we've done all that. Authoring mode that doesn't require rogo import all the time. We've done that by done. This is done with the test plan. Sorry. Environment variable. All right. Implement rogo import for org test. We've done that. Use SQLite rather than org file at runtime. Done that. Allow working from in-memory SQLite. That was only as a way of, that was like a duplicate idea to that concept. I was just gonna like always parse it, but I don't need to always parse it. I just use that model class, data class. Retest from local SQLite database. That seems like it is also a redundant. Fetch test incrementally from the server. I have not done that. And then change org files to allow smaller test prompts versus full page HTML. All right, so let's just move that out of it. That's a different thing. That is revamping the format. So rethink the org file format. Allow smaller test prompts versus full page HTML. That's really two things. Well, so the idea is that there's going to be a small chunk of it that shows up in the, like when you fetch it, is going to show like a smaller chunk rather than like full pages. Whereas on the screen in the server, you're going to see like a more complicated thing. But that I can worry about later. So fetch test incrementally from the server. And that's fine, but really this is its own little thing, right? This was like a, let's regroup this as something else. Something that's done, which is, I guess the whole point of this was to use import test plans into local database and run from there. So that whole thing is this 5 whatever, and then this is about talking to the server to do that. So import from the server, and that probably requires getting. Well, it doesn't matter if it's running locally or not. And get shell working, finish rogo client authentication. That probably might have something to do with this. And then once we're doing that, the idea is that as you run the test and you start passing tests or failing tests, when something changes, it should notify. It should notify the server that you've passed the test or whatever. I don't think I'm going to track like how many times you didn't pass the test, but I will track when you pass it for the first time and when you have a regression. Or I don't know. Maybe I do. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll make that optional and you can decide what data you want to share. You obviously have to share regressions and passing, but like, you know, it runs up until it gets to a test that doesn't run yet. And then once you pass that test, it gives you. I'll have to think about that. I do think that for my purposes, I want to, you know, be able to help people and see like how many times did they fail. I can't actually see their. I guess that doesn't really matter. Like, the only question is like, do they need help? And if they want help, I don't need to track the whatever. You just need, you only need to track the test passed so that you can get the next step or whatever. Yeah, I'm rambling. All right, so storing in progress, all that stuff is that, and then once I get all that working, I'm going to actually run through the LearnTrist test. So that's really more of a phase one. Update test protocol. Oh yeah, that's the protocol itself inside the LearnTrist. So that's simplify for LearnTrist. In other words, you don't have to put Q at the end of every file. I always find it annoying when I run the test. I write a test and it times out, and it says the letter Q was not at the end of the thing, saying that we should quit, but you should just quit when you get to the end of the input. And I'm also going to allow you to have multiple. Anyway, so this is the phase I'm currently in, right? So phase 0 is get LearnTrist up and running, up on the server, and make a free lesson for people to try out, which is LearnTrist. Talk to server, fetch test, boom, boom, finish rogo client authentication, right? That definitely needs to happen. Update rogo, notify front end, yes. So test passing, yes. Rogo API running at site. I might not change that URL. I might use a different URL. Rethink the org file format, yes. That's probably, well, it doesn't matter what order I do these in. Rethink shell attention. Yeah, I guess I'm done for like this session. So whatever I do next, I'm gonna have to go through that list to figure out what I want to do. But I've got accomplished something here. Like I have get log. What did I do? I did a bunch of stuff. So reified the configuration into a object. So I actually implemented org import, and I now run the test from the database after you've imported. So I think I'm good. And I will come back a little bit later today and do some more. I'm going to go down and see my daughter who just got back from school, and my wife, and my other little daughter. I'll see you guys